Happy Friday, everybody. I'm Nick Slavik. I'm the proprietor of the Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration Company. I'm also the host of this show, Ask a Painter Live. It's a weekly live Facebook show where I use my 24 years as a painter, restorationist, craftsman, colorist to answer all of your painting, interior, exterior, decorating questions live. Today we're going to go through my Raven Road project. That's the name of this new house that we're finishing now. We're in the final stages here. I'm going to give you a walkthrough on that, and we're going to go through a couple questions that were submitted throughout the week here. One has to do with, let's see, wood sashes and windows. Another one has to do with the wood front door, and another has to do with some blistering paint on a cabin restoration up north where there was some new siding mixed with some old siding. So first of all, I'll give you an update on this project here. We've been here for a week and a half, give or take. First thing we did was get everything primed. PVA primer on the walls, sprayed all that, back rolled what we could, left the project for a week or two, let them install all the trim, get in all the fireplaces, floors down, everything else like that. Then we came back and immediately we started working on ceilings number 1 and then trim number 2. A couple days ago, we finished the trim. We sprayed all the ceilings in here. This is actually a really nice kind of off-white. It's a little decorator trick that I use every once in a while when people have specific needs. So we have a beautiful, beautiful off-white ceilings throughout the house. We have all the trim enamel. You can turn that around here. You can see that, again, a nice off-white on all the trim here. That stuff has been cleaned off, primed, sanded, patched with wood filler, caulk all the cracks, sand it all again, vacuum it off, shop vac it again, spot prime it again. Then we go for the first coat of trim enamel. We sand it, we shop vac it, we tack rag it off, we spot patch anything that might have been missed or any little inclusions in the trim. Then we do the final coat, let it sit for a day, and then we come back and immediately start on walls. So after that, we finish the basement downstairs. So the basement has its final walls done. All the wood that needs to be varnished is varnished. Ceilings done, walls done, trim done. We've checked off the basement on this house. Today we moved up to the main floor here, and I will kind of walk you through this. Down in the basement of this project, we're going to have a little bit of a signal issue. So if it gets a little choppy, I'll come back upstairs and I'll walk you through that again. I'll turn this guy on. Okay. Walking downstairs. All right, you can see the fireplace in, everything varnished, all by hand using real oil varnish. Ceilings complete, walls complete, trim complete through here. Not that much light down in this room here. Doors came pre-finished from the factory and all of that. We had to seal all that up so we could spray the trim. A little bit of dust on this, but a beautiful oil varnish finish all by hand. Come back through here into the bedrooms. You can see that nice kind of play between the off-white ceilings, the kind of putty colored walls, and then all of the woodwork here. And you can see we take every measure we can to protect our finishes. So we have corners of the doors protected here. Another big thing too, outside corners where there's no woodwork, we completely cover those with cardboard because people drag extension cords through there and nick them up. We keep those safe. Bathroom doesn't have any lights, but a few minutes ago the stone got put in and we're waiting to touch up around that. Otherwise, all complete. Same thing down here. Beautiful Benjamin Moore advanced finish on the sill there. I'll walk you guys back upstairs here. Yeah, like I said, we're including this stairwell in the project upstairs, but you can see we take every precaution we can here to protect that factory finished stuff. So not only do we plastic it off and tape it off, we use cardboard bumpers and stuff on the outside, because as guys come around with ladders and extension cords and stuff like that, cardboard on top, we get everything protected there to keep that stuff good, just as if it were our home. So yeah, you can see the amazing amount of patching that we have to do for new drywall, which is pretty crazy, considering that this stuff has really never been lived in. And it takes, this particular project took me 2 of my senior apprentices an entire day to walk through and patch, but you can see when it's done, it's really worth the extra effort there, especially because, you know, we're going through the effort to give it a low luster finish right away. So it's got a nice finish that the homeowners can live with. And then we got back here, we got a whole bunch of utility closet, other stuff like that. So again, you can see our protective measures there. So I'll walk you back upstairs. Stairs protected. Metal spindles protected. You can see our command center. We're slowly picking things off here. Here's a room in process of having the walls painted. Ceiling is done. Trim is done. And you guys are witnessing something that I have not done in 24 years. I have never once taped off a ceiling line, but this particular drywaller, the way they sanded it, they left a little lip. In theory, it's supposed to be a perfect 90-degree corner. They left a little lip up there, so I did an experiment on a room hand cutting, and I did an experiment with taping, and taping was the way to go. So you guys are witnessing the first time in 24 years I've ever cut a ceiling line, or taped a ceiling line. So you can see the homeowner's paint samples here. Stone just got delivered today, a couple minutes ago, and you can see one of my apprentices is back here. Two of them are back here.
Beautifully.
Getting ready to do the powder room here. Coming back out, try to keep a clean job site, but a lot of other contractors kind of work against us there. We come back into the laundry room here. Again, stone just got delivered, so the stone guys were nice enough to sort of make a mess of our plastic work here, which is always nice. This room is ready to be painted. We're just waiting for the next couple apprentices to be done. Back here is the master suite. We have the apprentices back here rolling away, painting away. Getting it done back here. We're catching up this master bathroom after they put in the stone, because I don't want to leave something undone for the weekend. This is the master closet back here. New cabinet and stone all protected. Yeah, nice sort of heathery blue, kind of grayish color back here in the master suite. So this is in just working on the second coat back here in most places. Coming out into the daylight a little bit here. As we're waiting for things to dry, we're picking away at some miscellaneous exterior work. We're getting all this stuff primed, painted, caulked, watertight, so that we can get some exterior paint on. It was a little chilly this morning, could have painted outside, but we got lots of interior work to do, so we're kind of defaulting to the inside for now, but we're slowly catching this up as we need to. So next week we're going full steam ahead on the exterior trim out here. So all right, we'll walk back in here, and if you guys have any questions about the Raven Road project, this is the hashtag Raven Road project. You can type these in now. You can send them to me, any of my processes on new construction. What I plan to do with all this, I'm keeping copious notes. We're doing GoPro footage, we're doing time-lapse footage. I'm doing shot-by-shot journaling of this project, because I'm making the next master's class, if the PDCA would like it, I'm doing the perfect new construction. My last one was the perfect kitchen, where I did a treatise on painting pre-finished cabinets, enameling them. And this one will be no different. For those of you who caught my master's class at the last expo, it'll be more of the same, only I'm going to break it down scientifically why we do certain things on new construction. So, all right, going through a few questions here. I should mention too that this is the hashtag Raven Road project. If you type that in and click on it, you'll see all my updates from this project, from the time we started priming it to now when we're finishing some walls. The hashtag Cottage Cabin project is coming up too. Probably a week from now. I will be heading up north with the entire allotment of apprentices, and it's probably one of the coolest projects I'm going to do this year. It's a brand new cabin from the ground up, all new construction, but styled and tailored after a sort of 1920s or 1930s sort of northern Minnesota cottage or bungalow. And the homeowner is an artist type, and he's applying a lot of sort of really interesting finishes, color schemes, materials, things like that. It's a really interesting project from my end, because the homeowners actually cut down the own trees, they processed all the wood, and not only did they clad the entire outside with hand-split oak shakes, they made all the millwork for the inside out of trees that they cut down, milled it all to look historic, and they're up there putting it in now. And then, yeah, like I said, a week from now, I'll be going up there, and you guys can follow along in that project. That'll be a really fun one. I'll probably bring up the canoe and do a little fishing. The last time I was up there, I pulled almost a 40-inch pike out of the lake right in front of that house. It was a really good project. So, okay, Michael Lenz, he had asked his question about wood sashes, window sashes. Wondering what I can use on my wood windows to clean and brighten the wood. I have made a huge trade out of refinishing windows that are, somewhere between 5 and 20 years old here in Minnesota. We live in the Silicon Valley of window manufacturers here. We have Pella, we have Anderson, we have a whole bunch of other Marvin, this and that are here, and large manufacturing facilities here. And every new window that I get is made out of pine. I wish they would not be made out of pine. When I consult on new construction like this, I always tell the people get pre-finished clad window trim, because at least you have a warranty with that. Even if they use pine, they pre-finish a lot of the parts and assemble the windows then, so at least the areas that touch the glass and seat the glass are pre-finished there, or in theory are supposed to be pre-finished that way. If you get bare pine windows on a job site, they're fine, but they're going to take a lot of maintenance here. Like in Minnesota, 6 months out of the year, we have our heaters running, and we have our houses closed up, and you can see on that bottom window sash, there's tiny bits of condensation, and some houses have more than others if they have humidifiers or not, but that never goes away, and nobody's ever solved that. Well, the only way to solve it is to have moving air on it, but most people don't want fans going and stuff in their house in the winter here, because it does cool it down. So that moisture naturally gets into that pine. Another thing that compounds it is lacquer. Most of the new construction done here is done with nitrocellulose lacquer, which is a sin to use on new wood, especially pine. So you couple the softest wood known to man, pine, with lacquer, the most horrible wood finish for wood and standing up to water, and those two things, the lacquer will come right off of the wood, usually within a couple years, and the longer the homeowners let that stuff go, the blacker the corners of that stuff get. So number one, as soon as you start seeing finish come off, or discoloration, or bleaching from the sun, get rid of that old finish and start putting some oil on it to remediate that. The oil has a natural UV blocker that will stop that stuff, but it needs to be reapplied, especially here in Minnesota. If you're in a drier climate, if you're in Arizona, the moisture isn't going to be an issue, but the sun is going to be an issue, the UV rays. So you'll notice on the north side of your house, in a southern climate where the sun doesn't directly hit most of it, those windows last forever. You get on the south side where you get that constant UV all day, maybe a little moisture, those are the first ones to fail. So just keep an eye on that stuff, and just know that there is no maintenance-free finish for the life of a product. Technically, you don't have to do a lot to vinyl siding or steel siding or whatever else, but the aesthetics of it start to fail. So what you'll find is that, yes, you don't have to do anything to it, but if you want it to look like it did when it started, you do have to do something. So that's always the caveat with these maintenance-free products, especially the Trex and the sort of composite decking materials too. Like, technically you don't have to do anything to those, but they will not look the same as the day you put them in. You just have to know that going in. So if your windows have turned black, I have a special restoration process for that. It's very intricate. It's something that, with a wood chemist I actually came up years ago. It's nothing too crazy, but it's a series of chemicals and applications and methods. It's a little too in-depth to go into here, but one trick that I can pass along to you is that if you have some black on pine, an old wood restorer's trick is to use oxalic acid. I believe it's spelled O-X-A-L-I-C. It comes in crystals. I can even get it at my local hardware store. You can take oxalic acid, mix it up into a paste where it's almost like frosting, cake frosting, and you apply that with a chip brush to the black areas. Now, you have to get the old finish off. If there's any other finish there, that oxalic acid isn't going to penetrate as far as it would if you got rid of the old finish. So you want to scrape off as much of that old lacquer as you can. It comes off real easily. Apply that oxalic acid to it. Let it sit overnight. I do it real heavy. I apply it, let it dry overnight. The next day when you come back, it's going to be white and crystally. You want to, safety up. You use your mask, use gloves and everything else, because this, the powder, when you start sanding or removing it, is very irritating to your sinuses and stuff. So with your safety gear, remove all that stuff, and you'll find that it'll actually sort of bleach the wood a little bit back. Now, depending on how black your stains are, you may have to do this multiple times, but I found that it's huge diminishing returns after that first application of oxalic acid. There's tons of other people who do pressure washing, house washing, deck washing as a profession that are chemists. They know chemicals to brighten, to change things, to get rid of rust stains, to different woods, different chemicals, restoring processes. I have a very simple process. Most of the decks around me are cedar or pressure treated pine. Almost all the windows are pine, so really the same process that I can use for exterior decks, give or take a application because of outdoor versus indoor, can be done on all that stuff. So if you get into the exotic woods, Brazilian mahogany, Brazilian cherry, real mahogany, ipe, things like that, you got to change your chemistry up a little bit. But that oxalic acid, put on there overnight, and then you just get rid of it, shop vac it off, tack rag it off, and start applying. My favorite is a marine varnish. Any sort of Wooster, they make, not Wooster, Minwax makes a great sailboat varnish, an exterior spar varnish. Anything that's spar, any sort of clear finish that's rated for exterior can be used inside. Just use oil. It will save your windows in the long run. It's a little bit of a pain to work with, takes long to dry, smells funny. But honestly, if you go to a water-based finish, you're going to get the same result within a year or two. So use an oil-based finish, and even if it's an interior varnish, oil-based will go a long way in preserving those windows. So, Michael, thank you for the question. Jill Augustine, she writes in a couple questions. She included a picture of her wood front door, entry door. It's a couple years old. This is my door at my cabin. The finish is peeling. I'd be grateful if you'd recommend a method of restoration and a method of preventing this in the future. Now, normally I have my locked and loaded answer for this, which is, pull it off, chemically strip it, back down to wood, sand it, clean it, let it dry, more marine varnish. But when I saw her pictures of it, it wasn't that bad. Some of the finish just got dry and came off, which all these wood entry doors now that are coming from these factories, I have a feeling that they are finished with a lacquer. And I don't know how they can get away with that because it's an exterior application. I have a feeling it's either a lacquer or a sort of only pre-finished shop, other clear chemical that normal residential, commercial, or industrial painters don't get a hold of. It's probably a very specific product to factory pre-finishing that technically meets some sort of exterior specification, but we all know that they don't last. So her picture wasn't actually that bad. A little bit of dry finish. None of the wood underneath has been discolored. It just needs a sort of quick restoration, which I would probably not even take the door off the hinges for this one. I would just sand it down, make sure you get any loose finish off, buff out some of the areas with a sanding pad, being careful not to remove any of the stained wood underneath. Again, shop back it off, tack rag it off, and then apply 2 coats of that same marine varnish over the top. And my favorite is usually a satin. If you go semi-gloss, it really starts to show imperfections in the wood. It's a little too shiny, and you're not going to get any more perfection. In exterior varnish, if you've done 2 coats, sanding between coats, the difference between a gloss and a satin isn't going to be any more protection with the gloss. It's just going to be aesthetically different. So I would just use a satin. I believe it's called maybe Helmsman varnish from Minwax, but whatever their offering is good. There's a whole bunch of other, Sickens makes an awesome product, a door and window product, exterior. It's a super thick sort of spar varnish, that sort of deal. Tons and tons of great exterior products. Just make sure it's spar, it's oil, it's polyurethane, it's something like that to protect. When these doors come bare and I get a chance, the privilege to sort of put my stink on it right away, I usually put at least 2, but most likely 3 coats of marine varnish on those right away. And then I instruct the homeowners once a year or once every 2 years, you should, 2 years at the minimum, get out there and just clean it, buff it, put a coat of marine varnish on it again. Thinking about it like sunblock, where it varnishes a natural UV inhibitor. Spar varnish or exterior varnish has additional UV inhibitors in it, but they do wear out. So you have to keep reapplying it. There is no maintenance-free clear wood product out there on the market. For those of you who want a cedar look deck, you have to do it every 12 months. For those of you who want a natural wood finished front door, garage doors, you have to do it every year if you want that stuff to last. And they're huge investments. Almost nobody follows up with that maintenance regimen, and if you read the technical data sheets of the actual products, they will all recommend between deck stains and exterior varnish that you reapply every 12 months, and that's not even climate specific. It's not that I'm in Minnesota and we have to do that because our negative 45 in the winter and 105 in the summer. It's their general recommendation whether you're down in Arizona or up in Minnesota. So also Jill writes in another question about her cabin. 2 years ago we had the cabin painted, new siding and a combination of the 100-year-old siding original to the cabin. Lots of bubbling. The painter tried to fix it, but it keeps coming back. What is it, and what can we do to fix it? Number one, two things come to mind. Moisture is number one. Whenever you have, I assume it's latex paint being used on the outside. So number one, what comes to mind is moisture. I have seen very specific instances of failure in exterior projects where outside wall from a bathroom or a shower in an older home that doesn't have a good enough vent, and they have a whole bunch of people taking long showers every morning. Over time, moisture creeps in through that siding, or in particular times of the year, moisture will condense on the inside of that siding if the insulation isn't good, and the paint will bubble just outside the bathroom. I've seen this in Ramblers from the 50s and 60s, early 70s. I've seen it in historic homes that had, spotty kind of insulation, things like that. So, number one is moisture. If it's happening all over, I would say it has more to do with prep. In one of these things, painters love to jump to, must have been bad paint. It's almost never bad paint. It's human error. Humans are the weak spot in any sort of thing. The paint is almost never the culprit. The siding is almost never the culprit. The homeowner is definitely not the culprit unless they painted it previous to you. It's almost always human error. So let's say you got good paint. You put it on when it wasn't too humid. That could be another issue. You put it on when the temperatures are right, which in northern Minnesota, you think we have a short summer here in southern Minnesota. We only get 6 months. Up there, my God, there's still lakes with ice on it and stuff. So we have a very, very short season up north. The mornings are cool a lot of the times, and there's lots of dew. If there's dew on the house, if there's moisture issues, if the temp got too low, that can all cause latex or acrylic paint to not fully coalesce. A coating of latex paint is a series of sort of ball-shaped molecules, and when it lays down under ideal conditions, those balls kind of deform and press into each other, and they coalesce. They do not cross-link, but they do coalesce and to make one nice film across the whole house. It's good because they're all flexible and malleable, and it moves with the wood. The bad part about that is that it forms such a good shell, it doesn't let moisture come through very often. So if you have a large moisture issue in the house, if you have standard humidity issues, just climate sort of humidity, that's not such wild swings where the paint can't move and sort of breathe with that. But when you have a lot of moisture coming from in the house, or a lot of moisture being transferred through the siding, that latex or acrylic coating doesn't let enough of that come out. So then what gives is the adhesion between the paint and the siding, and it'll come out. My question to Jill, and she hasn't got back to me yet, but what I always do is cut a bubble out and look on the back of the bubble. If there's any dust or kind of chalky stuff on the back of the bubble, odds are it's a prep problem. The last coat of paint wasn't prepped properly. It's a couple failed coats of paint, and when you're dealing with a 100-year-old cabin in northern Minnesota, probably not very many professional coats of paint on it, probably done at the wrong time using the wrong products, so you're dealing with 100 years of possible misgivings to that house, including oil paint, lead paint, linseed oil stuff, possibly even milk paint or chalk paint or casein paint from way back in the day. So you're dealing with a lot of weird sort of, non-compatible materials up there. But I remember looking at this house a long time ago. It did not have a bubbling issue. After this last coat of paint, it had a bubbling issue. So number one that comes to mind is moisture. If you know there's not a moisture problem, if there's plenty of good siding that has just been redone or insulation that has just been redone, it's probably a prep issue. So as soon as Jill gets back to me about whether those bubbles have chalkiness or dust in the back of them, I'll relay that to you. But I always side with human error. This is one of the cases where I might side a little more with moisture, only because I've seen so many. This is a very specific problem with exterior stuff, and when it happens this quick after a full repaint, there's a lot of odd stuff going there. So, but then you throw in the variables of having a 100-year-old cabin in northern Minnesota that it happens to, and everything goes out the window. So it's a tough one to do there. But What can be done to fix it, basically you need to remove all that stuff. Ideally, you would remove all the paint and see what's going on and start over. That's probably not going to happen. So basically what you have here on your hand is a maintenance issue from now until the time you divest yourself of this cabin. You got to get out there. I would let it go because you already know the paint failed. I would watch it through a 12-month cycle. If those bubbles come and go, if the paint sort of relaxes, pay attention to when they come and when they go. If it's during humid points of the year, you really would want to look into, is there a ton of moisture in the basement of this cabin? Is it very humid in there? Are we in a low area? Is it a swampy area? Is the climate doing anything? If we're on a hill, if we're on a dry spot, if we're, whatever, then you just pay attention to when those bubbles come and go. If they don't go at all, then you know that it might have just been a one-time sort of deal where it was super humid. Maybe somebody wasn't in the house at the time, so the temp got turned down. Temp got bumped up when somebody came up, and it created a condensation issue when it was painting. It's really hard to say with that sort of thing, but if they come and go, then you know, or they sort of relax back to the house, you know it might be a climate issue. If they just stay, what you're going to have to do then is basically every year get out there, scrape those bubbles off, sand them down, spot prime them with oil primer, very important oil primer. That's the sort of fixer of all sins on houses, or at least the best you can do. And then make sure it's sealed up with the finest exterior paint you can get. Whatever manufacturer of paint you use, make sure it's the best. If you're using Sherwin, get the Duration. If you're using Benjamin Moore, get the Aura. If you're using any of those other main manufacturers, get the best stuff you can. Should be 70, 75 bucks a gallon. It is cheap insurance. For exterior paint jobs, somewhere between 80 and 90% is the labor cost, and 10 to 20% is material cost. And the difference between painting an entire exterior house with the worst paint you can get or the best paint is usually only a few $100. So it's almost silly not to get the best stuff you can. And yes, these Benjamin Moore Auras, they come with a big price tag, but super cheap insurance. And that's one of those things where, with cars, you spend, you get better cars, and all of a sudden you get diminishing returns, and you're just paying for sort of luxury items. It's not really that way with exterior paint. Interior paint, there is a little bit of that. If you pay the highest end interior paint, I don't know how much better than it is than a mid to high range paint right under that. But exterior, the resins are different. The additives are different. Everything about it, the workability of it is better. So get the best stuff you can. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. I'll scroll through here. Brian, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for watching. Brian's a fellow pro. I'd be interested to see what you're working on today. Jamie, thank you for watching. I appreciate all the interaction here. Chuck, what oil varnish do you use? This is a Zinsser product called Quick 15 for those things. On construction projects, I tend to use the Satin Quick 15. It dries quick, so then when the electrician or the plumber shows up with their hole saw, it's not an issue in here of dust and things like that. So Chuck, let me know if you can get a hold of that. It's a Zinsser product. Kelly, thank you for watching. Sarah, thank you for watching as well. My wife, my long-suffering wife, good to see you watching as well. I'll be home in a few hours. James, thank you for watching. Jim, my good friend. Jim had recently asked me a question about deck stuff. There's a lot of these deck products that are sort of deck correct. Every manufacturer has one. It's sort of an elastomeric, rubberized, chunky. It's sort of it's made to fix all problems in decks. And in theory, it's good. When I go down to Florida for vacation, I see it on some piers and some docks and things like that, and it actually holds up pretty well there. Especially because it's close proximity to, the sun and the sea air and the salt and things like that. Up in Minnesota, it's a complete disaster, and I make it a point never to badmouth products because there's almost always an application for a product, and I probably just haven't found it. If I think a product is very poorly designed or just doesn't work well theoretically, I usually default to I just haven't found the perfect use for it yet. Those deck correct sort of things, those decks, problem solving things, do it once. You got to roll on this super thick coating, get in there between the floorboards, and sometimes some of them are so thick you can even, they actually in the instructions tell you to take a putty knife and scrape it out from between the boards, and it here in Minnesota, I have seen some of the worst disasters in decks ever from people who have used this stuff, thinking again, and they're not doing anything wrong, they're just believing the kid at the paint counter of Home Depot when they say, oh yeah, this is a two-step process, you put it on there and that's good, that's it, you'll never do anything for the rest of your life. Well, then next year when it starts to peel up, what do? Do you put more down? You really can't remove this stuff, and you can put more stuff over it, but you're sort of left with this weird failing rubberized sort of coating. In our climate here, in the applications I've seen it on, it's a complete disaster. So again, surprisingly, it works very well down south in the areas that I've seen, especially holding up to salt water, which is amazing to me. I never would have, I thought it would be a worse failure down there. So I'm thinking for the application, maybe I just haven't seen a good application yet. When people asked me to do it, especially 2 years ago when it first came on the scene, everybody I talked to about decks said, hey, what about this stuff? What about this new rubberized? What about this? I'm just, not, in theory, looking at the product, looking at the technical data sheets and the instruction, something didn't jive with me, so I refuse to use this stuff, but not to say that there's not a use out there. So, but thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. And, Chris, my good friend, watching as well. Jim, my school's building a green treated deck as a project in construction trades course. Awesome project. That is really cool. I love those construction trades courses where they actually put those kids to building. A lot of them build sheds and garages or do projects there. I've actually been trying to get into my own high school and offer my time as a, come in for a day and teach the trade of painting to the guys when they actually have a project to do. And I'm hoping that'll come through. But yeah, Jim, the question about stain for those decks has largely to do with how I direct what to use on a deck is directed all by the homeowner's wishes. Most of my homeowners want that cedar colored deck, and then I'd be very honest with them about the maintenance regimen. If you want that beautiful orangish, reddish, light, kind of pinky, brand new cedar deck for the rest of your life, it's every 12 months you got to wash it, sand it, prep it, clean it, and put another coat of oil stain on it. And most people say, hey, that's great, and then I don't see them for about 4 years, and then I have to restore the thing again when some of the flat areas turn black. So it's just human nature. I understand it. If the homeowner wants like a painted version or something like that, there's solid color stains for that. So right off the bat, there's people ask me about specific products, and number one, I always say, well, what does a homeowner want to do? What do you want it to look like? Then backing off of that, figure out what products to use. So I'm still a fan of some penetrating oils for decks. Getting harder to find, but there is new hybrid stuff. I know. Come to Sibley East High School near me. I would love to, Jim. Put in a good word for me, and I'll pack up all my gear for a day. I'll come in and I'll teach the craft to the young people if they want. I'd be more than happy to, especially if we got an actual project to do. And also, if they ever want to load up on a bus and come to one of these, I can put them all to work for half a day and teach them the trade too. So put in a good word for me, Jim. I'd be happy to interact with the young people. So thank you so much. Jim is a music guy. I believe he teaches a band and stuff for that high school. He actually recommended the classical music for my last sort of art film that I did for my company, that what it's like to be a 21st century craftsman. So Jim was the genius behind the music selections there. So yeah, I'll scroll through, make sure I didn't forget anything. All right, well, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate the interaction. Send any questions you have for me. Remember, hashtag Raven Road Project. That's this. If you want to get updates here, I'll be posting pictures of the finished work, things like that. If you have any new construction specific questions, I can actually point out stuff to you here. And the hashtag Cottage Cabin Project, I'll be going up in a week. That is probably the coolest project I'll do all year. I'll be kind of bringing you guys through the process on that as we go. So thanks again for watching, and thanks for watching the Ask a Painter. We'll see you guys next week.